Hey everybody, it's me again. This time we're doing Illustrator. Um, this is Illustrator 101 Part 1. Um, our project that I assigned earlier was to take a minimalist style house similar to this and to use Illustrator to sort of stylize the look of it. So what I'm going to do is show you how to use Illustrator, how to import a template file, and then how to trace over it. As you can see, I've used a monochromatic color scheme. Um, when you do the final drawing, you probably will not have stroke, a stroke on the lines, so you might want to turn that off. Just so you make sure that there's no gaps in between these shapes. I chose the purple color or mauve color, whatever you want to call it, basically from the background image or the template image. Let me not dim the image here, undim it. I can't remember exactly where I sampled it from, but it was somewhere in this background, probably from here somewhere. Um, so as you can see, because this is a sort of an expressionistic way of doing things, the color of the house is sort of an off-white, but we're using this purple to stylize it. And again, this is in your book um, under, I believe it's chapter 4. But let me dim that back. So what we're going to do is start from scratch. We're going to go up to File, New. We want a print image, and we're going to turn it to landscape since we know our image or template is a landscape image. And then we're going to click OK. Well, before we do that, let me go ahead and name this minimalist house, and then click OK. Okay, so we start off with a blank canvas. Go up to File, Place, and find the image. In this case, this is my JPEG that I downloaded off the internet. Click that image and then make sure you say link and make sure it says template and then place. And there's my template image. Now the thing about a template is that it's locked, which means that you can't accidentally edit it or do anything to it that's going to hurt it. So it's locked, but it's also, like I showed you earlier, dimmed by default. This is good, so the image is easier to see, and it doesn't overwhelm the artwork that you're creating. Okay, so let me cancel out of that. Okay, now the first thing you want to do, like I said earlier, is try to pick a color that you want to express this image. And again, I sort of picked this purplish mauve color in the background using the eye picker or the color picker tool. This is eyedropper, whatever you want to call it. And as you can see over here in my colors dialog for my fill color, it changed to the color that it picked. And of course you can pick any color you want to, but I decided on this purplish color. Then we're going to select our pen tool, And for this, because of the complexity of the image that we're going to have in the final, uh, when we're done, and since we have our strokes turned off, um, what I'm going to do is go up to View and say Outline or Control Y. This will only show the stroke, okay, or the path of the stroke, I should say. Okay, now the beauty of this is it's not dependent on what the stroke width is, and in this case the stroke is off. So we can still see our path. We can't see a fill to it, but in this case, at this point, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to delete those. So I'm going to use the Z or Z key and zoom in here on this overhang. Click on my pen tool, and what you want to do is break up the image into shades. Okay, this is darker than this, so that's going to be one shape right here. So I'm going to click here, 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 and then close the segment or close the shape by clicking on the first anchor point. Okay, now we have a closed shape. If I hit Control Y, you can see that the fill is that color that I chose earlier. I'm probably going to use a darker color. We're using the original purple, just to start off with. So I'm going to go to HSB, which is hue, saturation, and brightness. It's a little bit easier to pick colors this way. First of all, I'm going to jack up the saturation. That's the vividness of the color. Okay. And then I'm going to darken the color by lowering the brightness. Okay. So now we have a fairly good color, and since we've already got this particular color selected, we're going to go over to this overhang over here and create this shape while we've got the color selected. Okay. Now, as you can see, the stroke is, the fill is still on. Hit Control Y to hide that. Now we have our first two shapes, and basically from this point on, it's just filling in where the different shades change. And for instance, I'm going to click here, connect this, hit the space bar to pan, connect that anchor point, come down to here where this shape changes, following the contours here, and then coming back over to this way and closing the shape. And now if I change that, you can see that this is the same color, so we want to lighten that up. You can wait until the end of your project if you want to. I just particularly want to go ahead and change the color just to keep it separated from the other shapes that we've created so far. Control plus to zoom in that way. Use the direct select tool to select separate anchor points like this. I'm going to move this up so it closes that gap. I'm going to move this over to be perpendicular to this bottom anchor, so might have to do this manually. There we go. Just trying to keep the shapes clean all the way around. And now we will go into these windows, these true story windows, or whatever, clear story windows, excuse me, whatever you call them. Probably the best um, procedure here would be to create the window pane itself first. Um, and then let's change the color to something very light, ramping up the brightness, and then I'm going to pull down the saturation so it's just got a little hint of that purple color in there. Okay. Um, Now I'm going to create the next window pane. And as you can see, I've got smart guides turned on. These are useful when you're doing this kind of thing, because it will tell you where your path is and where anchor points are, and it helps you to sort of connect with other shapes so everything is seamless. And for instance, here there's a intersection. You can see the green line. Here I'm on this path that's on the overhang, so I'm going to click on that to start this next pane and come down and show you how these smart guides work. So I'm going to click here, and as you can see, I'm pulling down perpendicular. Make sure I'm intersecting here. See, I pulled over here to mark this anchor, and then this is the intersection between my original point and the other pane. So I'm going to pull this over, make sure I'm keeping it straight, and go back up to the intersection of the overhang, click there, and then close the path. Okay, so if I zoom out and turn off our background layer just by clicking this little shape here, this is what we have so far. It's not much, obviously, but it's just a matter of picking these shapes and continuing along until you're finished. Just patience and practice and more practice. So I'm going to zoom back in to this pane, pick my pen tool, hit the path, or intersect the path here. Make sure that I've got this intersection here. Come over to where this frame is. Click here, and then go all the way up to the intersection of the path and make sure I've got my line straight. Click here and then close the path. Okay, so that's one clear story done. And then we're going to move over here, since we've already got the color selected, and do these panes. Again, we just start up at the top, click down, make sure we keep our line straight, click across, click, make sure we've got our parallel line here, or a perpendicular line here, and then close the path. Alright, and then I'm actually going to create this overhang now because I see a problem that I'm going to run into as I go down this way. I want to keep this line parallel to the edge of this overhang here, so I need to go ahead and create the overhang. So I'm going to click my selection tool, then click this path to select that color, then go back to my pen tool and start over here. See, I've got my intersection here, So I'm good there. Click. Um, Make sure I've got a straight line. Click, and then come up here to this anchor point and click. Then I'm going to come all the way over here to this anchor point. Then here, and go straight up, hopefully. Okay. I'm going to hit Control Y to exit out of that. And then come over here, click here. So now I've got my edge of my overhang. Then I'm going to close the path. Okay. Now, excuse me. Now, with this, you can see there's some depth of this frame here that's overlapping this. We're not concerned so much with that kind of thing. Right now, we're just getting basic shapes. That's why I just went ahead and pulled this line down. If you know, need be, I can come back later, and when I put in this frame going down this way, I can just draw on top of this overhang, and everything will be fine. Now it looks like I actually got this these lines fairly parallel to each other, so I did good there. I'm gonna go ahead and select my selection tool, hit this shape so I get this color back, and then I'm gonna hit the pen tool. I'm gonna sort of guesstimate what this looks like and hit there. Now I'm going to go up, keeping perpendicular, and then close this path. Now I'm going to look, make sure, see there's a little more gap here than there is over here, so I'm going to zoom in and see what I can do about this. A for direct select, hit the anchor tool, anchor point, excuse me, and then I'm going to move this up a little bit. And again, this part is basically just visualization here. Move this up so it's more parallel. That looks pretty good. So hit Control 0 to zoom back out, Control Y to bring back our shapes, and just for the sake of, okay, so I do have a gap here. At this point I need to decide what I'm going to do about that. Over here I don't have a gap. I basically cut away that frame that goes around the window. I think I'll worry about that later. Let me decide what I want to do about the top of these frames here, whether to keep them or whether to get rid of them. So until that point right now, I'm just going to continue with these panes right here. So Control Y and then turn back on our template layer. Z to zoom in and hit the pen tool. Okay, click here, go down, make sure we're perpendicular, and intersect there, and make sure that we're straight here, and let's see, right about there, and click, and then come back up and try to get parallel with this line up here as best we can, and click on this. That's pretty good. It's a little bit more here than there. So I'm gonna hit my direct select tool and sort of pull this up a little bit. That may be too much. Pull it up here. There we go. That's a little better. You have to forgive me, I get kind of obsessive about this kind of thing. But it's better to be correct than not to be, so, or as correct as we can be. And again, this is probably going to be a moot point if I decide to keep this frame up here. I mean, get rid of the frame, I should say. And then Control 0 to back out. So now we got to decide what to do about this wood frame. Now on this side, if you remember, I sort of got rid of that frame because I connected the pane to the line, the edge of this overhang. Now the advantage of having a closed shape in this case is that I can actually come in here and pick these anchor points and then hold down shift to select that anchor point and back down that way. See how this works. I'm using the down arrow to just nudge it down. That looks pretty good. We'll save. Again, when we created our new image, we named it ahead of time. That saves us time at this point, so we can say save. Now I'm choosing to save it as Illustrator CS3 since that's what we use at school. If you don't have to save it as an earlier version, the best is to just leave it as the current version that you're using. And I'll show you why in just a minute. I'm going to include the linked file. It makes the file size bigger, but it prevents you from having to look for a template if you move files around. And then I'm going to say OK. It's going to give me this warning. Saving to a legacy format may cause some changes to your text layout and disable some editing features when the document is read back in. That's just a nice way of saying that if you've got advanced, or if you're using features that are new to CS5, they won't be available to you if you save it as a CS3 like I'm doing. And I don't care because I'm not using any of those features, so I'm just going to say yes to continue. Okay. Now I'm going to show actual size, and I'm going to turn off the image and turn back on the preview. Right, so it's looking good so far. This is one of the advantages of using Illustrator for this type of thing, is the real crisp lines, and then I can zoom in almost infinitely and these lines stay the same. And the same is true if I were to print these. It doesn't matter how big or how small this image is, it's going to always be crisp and clear because it's vector line. Okay? Whereas Photoshop is primarily pixel based. Okay? And pixel stands for picture element, and we went over that in class, but this is why we use vector lines, especially for things like logos and other branding, where it can be as small as a business card or as big as a billboard. So I'm going to go back to actual size, turn back on my template, and go back to my outline. And I could keep going. Obviously there are other aspects to Illustrator. This is basic stuff here. Bringing in a template to trace from, using your pen tool to create shapes, previewing and using outlines to allow you to draw more easily. the next video I'll go more in depth on layers and arranging objects. For instance, um, every object you create, the newest objects are always on top in the layers. Okay, so basically the new objects get stacked on top of the old, so forth and so on. You may not want to keep them that way though. You may create an object and need it to go behind another object. Well, for that you go up to Object, Arrange, and then either bring it to the front or send it to back. Um, Again, we'll go over that in a later video. But thank you for watching this, and I hope it helps you in your projects 3 and the rest of the class.